It is Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. And thank you all for joining the MMA Eco Live podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Chris Presnell. I'm so excited. I'm getting ahead of myself. And guys, I'm on the ground here in Las Vegas, giving you all of the goods for Road to UFC. I arrived on Tuesday after a long drive, and all week have had the best week of my life. I'm later in this podcast here in just a minute, actually going to go through all of the fights for Road to UFC. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm sure there's a lot of new people here. My name's Chris, and I am an MMA media member covering Asian MMA. My page is MMA Ecosystem. I also work for Tapology, covering all of the happenings around Asia, particularly in China. And for the last 3 years, my passion has been to bring the events, fighters of Asia into the spotlight, able to enjoy for all of, especially the English speaking fans that may not have a great interpreter to know what's going on over in Asia. So I've been covering Road to UFC a lot, and that has led me here. And I will maybe on next week's podcast, I'll talk a little bit more behind the scenes kind of stuff, kind of like what the experience has been like for me. Y'all are free to ask any questions if you want as well. This week, I kind of want to focus more on the fighters and the fights. We got a lot of fights to get through. But I will just say it's been incredible being able to meet a lot of the people that I've just been messaging back and forth with pretty much every week for the last couple years. I've been able to meet a lot of the UFC Asia team, and that has been an absolute joy. Some of them I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. And they're like, yeah, we know who you are. And it's just really fun. Got to connect with Dean and the singer earlier today. A lot of folks spent some time at the Fighter Hotel. Mostly I was working a little bit. I also met up with a couple folks there. And it's been really good. I have no complaints from my time here. Been a great experience. The weigh-ins were earlier today, and that was my first time at the UFC Apex. And I got to walk in past the long hallway of all the Ultimate Fighter shirts, and that was really cool. I could have stopped and looked at all of them. The fan in me really wanted to just pour over every single one of those t-shirts, especially more of the earlier seasons for me. But, I had a job to do. So I've had my nose to the ground. I've been working hard, partying pretty much not at all since I've been to Vegas, just been focused on working, just been focused on, being professional, being able to be prepared for what's coming up, lots of different situations. So it's been good. But let's get into the fights, shall we? Because there's 10 fights going down from the Apex tomorrow night. All the fighters made weight except for one. So originally, it feels like this fight came together a little bit late, but the non-tournament fight between Samander Muradov and Jonathan Piersma is now a 174-pound catchweight fight. And that was because Piersma missed weight. He weighed in probably 20 minutes into the window and didn't go back and cut weight. I think they realized, I wasn't privy to what was going on. I'm not connected to any of Piersma's team, any of those guys. So I wasn't really sure what the story was there, why they decided to not cut. Because the thing is that even if you don't feel like you can cut the extra 3 pounds, even if you can cut another pound, then that could reduce, I don't know exactly what all the percentages are, but that could reduce the amount of money that you forfeit as a purse. So if you can get down to 173, gosh, even 172 and a half, you could keep a little bit more of your money. So I'm not sure what the story was there. The other fighter that was close was Japanese fighter Tokitaka Nakanishi. He weighs in also about 20-25 minutes in at 1 pound over. He goes back and cuts weight, comes back at 136. So he's good. All of the tournament fights, good to go. If you may have seen on social media, Yoo Soo Young, Korean bantamweight, he he kind of had a little bit of a close call. It sounded like this morning they were having some issues like getting into the sauna to cut the last couple pounds. I don't know what the story was there. I reached out about that and I just heard, yeah, it was a misunderstanding, miscommunication. And so his team was worried that they weren't going to be able to cut the last little bit of weight, but he was able to make weight 136 pounds, no problem at all. So yeah, let's get into the fights. And I just updated all these on Tapology, including all the weights. So the bout orders, everything should be correct on Tapology. Let me share this with you, and I'm just going to hit on these real quick. Just real quick. But I had a couple of you reach out even and be like, oh, no Road to UFC preview. Well, it's coming. And here it is. So the first episode is Yan Chi Hui versus Danny McCormick, opening the card for a flyweight non-tournament fight. This is a hard fight for me to break down. I feel like Yan Chi Hui is a pretty tough fighter to look good against. She's so strong. And I think this is one of the hardest fights for me on the whole card. I don't even know if I'm going to make a prediction here, but Danny McCormick, I haven't watched her super closely. She's the Invicta FC strawweight champion, moving up, and she's defended her belt in Invicta as well. So, I mentioned this when I was doing the live commentary on the weigh-ins this morning, but she's fought some pretty tough fighters her last couple fights. Even her last fight, she got the submission. So Valeska Machado, she's one of the very top strawweights outside the UFC. Normally in a situation like this, this kind of fighter would be either in Contender Series or just signed straight to the UFC. Usually if you win a belt with an Invicta and you defend the belt and UFC likes you, you might just get a contract. So I think this fight between McCormick and Yan Chi Hui, probably you can see this like a Contender Series fight where the winner most likely going to get signed unless they just have an abysmal kind of fight. So I do think that the winner going to get signed by the UFC. I was surprised that McCormick didn't just go on Contender Series, but this is kind of a similar situation, although she is moving up to flyweight for this fight. So that could be really interesting. I mean, Yan Chi Hui is just like a motorboat of a fighter. She is she's powerful. She hits really hard. She wrestles, and McCormick has pretty good grappling. So I'm not really sure how this fight's going to go. This kind of preview for this fight, I don't know really what to make of the fight, but both fighters are solid. Yan Chi Hui has had some issues finding top quality opponents. Her last fight, she won against Lisa Cariaco in Road to UFC. She also had that guillotine submission loss to Karina Silva, who's doing great things right now in the UFC. Before that, she was looking really good. She's a great wrestler. Again, hits hard. So I'm going to lean towards Yan Chi Hui in this fight just because I think the damage will probably be on her side. And, she's probably not going to have a height advantage or a reach advantage, even being the bigger fighter, but I think she's going to have a big strength advantage. So I think that she'll probably be able to defend at least most of the takedowns of McCormick and get the win. But I could also see McCormick getting a submission. That's the other thing to watch for. Let's move on to the flyweight division. This is an interesting fight here. Kiro Singh Sahota versus Ruel Penales. I think most likely this will be one of the more one of the easier fights for me to pick, or at least the fight that has a really heavy underdog and a heavy favorite with Sahota. I think Sahota looked great in his last fight in the Road to UFC. Really technical guy, uses his range really, really well. I think personally it's going to be him and I think he's going to go to the finals. Who he's fighting is hard to pick, but I'll get to that in a second. Kiro Singh Sahota uses his range really, really well, hits pretty hard, has a lot of maturity as a fighter. And I think Ruel Penales, he's a really explosive guy. he also hits hard. He can be wild at times, but I think Sahota, just his technicality, his kind of more polished nature of things, I think that's going to get him the W here. And so I think probably you're going to see him win either a decision, because Penales will be able to rely on his own toughness, or I think you'll see Sahota get like a TKO or a submission that's kind of built up from the TKO, like strikes that kind of wear him down. So that should be a very action-packed fight. That's what I expect from there. This one is really interesting. Yusu Young versus Darmisi Jawupasi. Yusu Young I think he is maybe the favorite to win the bantamweight tournament, or at least in my eyes, he's the favorite. As soon as the full field was announced, I felt like, yeah, this could be the guy. So his grappling is incredible. He's you saw him fight Shohei Nosei, and Shohei was throwing different submissions at him, but overall, Yusu Young was able to just manhandle Shohei Nosei on the ground. And, he is a really hard fighter to out-grapple. He's a BJJ black belt, really strong, really an athletic, explosive wrestler as well. He doesn't just have grappling, but he's got that physicality along with him too. Darmisi Jawupasi is he's a very hot-headed kind of wrestler grappler, and I think he has a really big following from fans. Probably a lot of Kazakh fans really like Darmisi, and I do too. He's a really fun fighter. He pushes a really strong pace. He goes for the finish. I think he's going to be a little bit outgunned in this fight against Yusu Young, especially, the first round could be a little bit closer, but in the past, Darmisi has sometimes shown that he's going to burn through his energy a little bit too quickly, doesn't always make the most tactical decisions. All that to say, there's always room for a fighter to grow, to show off new evolutions. And so I could definitely be proven wrong here. But I think probably Yusu Young is going to get either like a late finish or a decision win on the strength of his grappling. Now, Darmisi could just try to keep things standing, defend the takedowns, and strike. Personally, I don't know why you would try to out-grapple Yusu Young, no matter who you are. He's just that good. So the fight could end up being two grapplers striking with each other. Very, very interesting fight. All right, this one, Choi Dong-hoon versus Angad Bish in the flyweight division. Love this fight. I really am excited to see how Choi meets the challenge of Angad Bish. So the first round, Choi fights against Jinyu Shirye, who I think was probably the favorite to win the whole flyweight tournament. Barely loses the fight by split decision. A lot of people thought Jinyu Shirye should have won that fight. I'm not really sure. I go back and forth. I just rewatched it recently. It was really close. Choi is the real deal. He's really strong. He's actually pretty small for flyweight, especially when I saw these two guys squaring off today. Like, Angad Bish is just like a cement block of a dude. He's massive. He looks like he's a whole weight class bigger than Choi. Choi is really not, a big flyweight. But he has really good striking defense. He hits pretty hard, and he's got that judo black belt background. So really strong hips, good in the clinch, a good grappler, a pretty complete package, if you ask me, especially at 7-0, as young as he is. So in Choi's last fight, he fought someone like Jinyu Shirye that was really fast, used range. Going to be the opposite kind of fight against Angad Bish. Angad Bish is a very dominant grappler, good wrestler. You can tell that he just thinks in a lot of levels above his peers, or a lot of his peers. He gets the first round TKO against John Almanza, and just once he gets fights to the ground, especially if he gets your back, it's his world. So I don't really know. The question will be like, will Angad Bish be able to pull Choi to the ground? If he does, it's going to be on the merit of his determination and grit, because I think Choi has pretty strong hips. But Angad Bish, he's a pretty aggressive guy. So the other thing with Bish is that his striking doesn't have a whole lot of facets to it. at least that I've seen, but the guy hits really hard. He clipped John Almanza with a lot of really heavy counter right hands in their first fight. So you got to watch that right hook of Angad Bisht. He could always change the course of the fight with that. So I still lean towards Choi just because he's the overall more complete fighter. I think he has a little bit of a higher ceiling than Angad Bisht, but this is a hard fight to pick because the matchup, it really depends on if they get in these exchanges and Bisht is able to land that right hand kind of at the end of these combinations, then that could change things. Then he might be able to get Choi down. So I don't know. I think Choi will win a decision, but I feel shaky on that. Bisht is a solid dude. So this last one, Tokitaka Nakanishi against his Kazakh name, as you can see here, Balgan Genesoli. That's how you say his Kazakh name. The Chinese transliteration, Bargung Jelaisa, give or take. This is an interesting fight as well. I don't really know who to pick here. Both guys are pretty good grapplers, but I don't know. I don't really have let's take a deeper look here. Neither guy super stood out in their first fight. Nakanishi just able to kind of control against Kim Kyo-sung in that first fight. Not a whole lot of super meaningful offense, but overall, I mean, he does have a lot of finishes to his name. You can see that. Pretty much all of those on the ground. Yeah, all of those are on the ground. So he likes to bring this fight to the ground. Bargung also likes to get the fight to the ground as well. So this could be another fight that you see these two guys strike it out. And between the two, I would probably lean ever so slightly to Bargung. Just ever so slightly. So this will be an interesting fight. It's hard when neither guy really had a standout performance in their last fight. We can take a look here at Bargung. And yeah, it was Bargung, he fought against Li Yunfeng in the first fight. Pretty so that's why it's kind of hard to judge his, because I think Li Yunfeng, he's coming in on short notice. I think he was way overmatched against Bargung, and it was a fairly easy win for him. So a little bit harder fight to pick here. Nakanishi could surprise me, but I'm leaning slightly towards Bargung here. I think bantamweight finals, you could have Bargung against Yu Su Young. All right, let's look at the other episode. We're flying through these here. Samander Muradov versus Jonathan Piersma. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this fight just because I haven't really done any background checks on either of these guys. I admit that I don't know a single thing about Jonathan Piersma. So he's got the Cage Fury gloves, so he fights for CFFC. That's always a good sign. Fought some decent fighters his last couple fights. You see he's got to win over a 20-9 fighter, but most of these fighters, 5 fights or less. So, and he's got that loss to Charles Radke, although that was a split decision 2.5 years ago. A lot of finishes, so that's always a good sign. He's got an omoplata submission, so a lot of submissions. Probably, looks like he's probably a submission kind of guy. 5 of his 9 wins come by submission. Samander Muradov, I think for Samander in this fight, if Piersma wins, I don't think he's going to get the UFC call up, just because the weight miss. But Samander Muradov, a lot of things to like about him. 24 years old, welterweight, fights out of Tajikistan. The UFC would love to have as many exciting Tajik fighters as they can get, and undefeated as well. And so last couple fights, he fought 2 other guys after his last road UFC fight. And first one, a decision, which wasn't the most exciting fight. And then the last fight, his opponent had to drop out from a shoulder injury after the first round. So, he's got a lot of really high level experience. That's the thing about Samander Muradov, is really from this fight onward, he was fighting pretty solid fighters. John Sikaria over in Road UFC in the first season, and then fought in UAE Warriors, fought in EFC, Eagle FC. So this guy's got some pretty good experience. And a lot of folks really wanted to see Samander Muradov go to the UFC immediately after that first Road UFC win. And I think if you take a step back, the guy's only 24. So he was 22 back then. He was, what was he going into that fight? He was just 6-0 or 7-0. So still pretty young. No harm for the UFC to just give him a couple more fights. I think if the fight is a snooze fest, he may have to win a couple more. But if Muradov looks dominant, if he's able to get the W pretty easily, then I think it's a lock that he'll go to the UFC. He'll be 11-0, and from a really passionate fan base representing Tajikistan. So I think probably this is Muradov's fight to lose. But really, anything goes in terms of this fight. I have no idea how it's going to go. All right. Then next up, we've got, guys, this is a good one. This is a great fight. Excited for this. Feng Xiaozan against Miki Motono, or Moltono. Not really sure how to pronounce that. I need to take some basic Japanese classes just to get some of the pronunciations right. Feng Xiaozan against Motono. This is a rematch. So the first fight, they fought over in Happy Elephant Champions League. That was 2 fights ago, October of last year, so not that long ago. Overall, Motono was on top. She was controlling grappling, and Feng Xiaozan throws up an armbar from her back and gets the tap. So that was really impressive. Really big win. Motono, she's got an 8-4 record, which is not the best looking, but she's, I think, even better than that would suggest. She's a really solid fighter. And honestly, I think the winner of this fight will probably get in the UFC one way or another, even if they don't win the finals, because I've heard a lot of really good things about Feng Xiaozan. I was actually able to meet her coach last night, which we know each other already, but her coach Yuan Chuanbo, he came over and is going to be with Feng for this fight. And it's really interesting because, a lot of the Chinese fighters, they're with the PI. They're having other big name fighters in their corner, like Yan Qihui is going to have, I think my friend Wong, who is the manager to Yan Xiaonan, he is actually going to be on Yan Qihui's corner. I think Mahashata, which I also got to meet Mahashata yesterday. He is going to be in one, if not both, of the Chinese Kazakh guys, Darmisi or Baragung. But yeah, he's there to corner as well. So you have some of these fighters working as corners. Feng really comes from she's still kind of in a very traditional mode of Chinese education where she's really committed to her team. She's not a part of the PI. I think she's trained at the PI before, but she's still really committed to her gym, Chuanbo, mixed martial arts. And yeah, I got to meet her coach yesterday. Tried my best to keep up with Chinese. My Chinese is not good. And I was asking how she was doing, and she said that she's doing great. And I think Yan Xiaonan is going to be in her corner as well, because she went out to Team Alpha Male maybe a week ago. So so Yan will be there with Feng Xiaozan. And I've heard a lot of people really hype up Feng Xiaozan like she could be the next big thing. And you really just have to, I know her first fight, she fought, not the UFC's first pick for Road UFC, but she looked incredible in that first fight. Looked really dangerous. Once she got the fight to the ground and pound was all there. The top control was all there. Fight's very mature, just 22 years old. And she's already fought a lot of, women's strawweight in China has a couple decent names to it, but it's not like there's a lot of options to fight. But she's really fought a lot of them. She's fought Huang Fei'er. She's fought Liu Xiaoni twice. And, now she's ready for this Road UFC opportunity. So I think that she is improving a lot, and this fight is really hard to predict. I'm probably going to side with Feng Xiaocan in the fight to get either I don't know, some kind of submission or a decision win. But Mickey Molteno, she is really good. She's got that win over Moreri Suda in the fight before the Feng fight, and she's just skipping right over to the semis. Really, I mean, look at these losses. You look at the losses: Seika Izawa twice, Casey O'Neill. So really pretty solid, even in defeat. Hasn't fought the best competition overall, I would say, but you look at her skills. She's a really good grappler. If the fight goes to the ground, it should be really exciting. If the fight goes to the ground, I think it should be really exciting. So really looking forward to that fight. I don't know. I don't know who to pick. It's hard to pick against the person that won in the first fight. So especially when it was so recent, and I think Feng is getting better really quickly. So I'm gonna go with her, but I don't know. Wouldn't be surprised either way. Another really, really fun fight: Shin Haraguchi against Zhu Kongjie. I think of all the fighters in the first round, Zhu Kongjie was the most impressive to me. This guy has everything the UFC really wants in a fighter. He's really aggressive. He's really technical, but hits really hard. So he's got a really fan-friendly style. He's got a great record, 19-4. And who was I talking to? I think I was talking to one of the PI guys yesterday, one of the UFC Asia staff, and they were just like, if like American fans could see his personality through social media, they would fall in love with the guy, because he's got the like really energetic personality to kind of go along with this fan-friendly fighting style. So I think, and he's right in his prime. He's at 28. So now is the time for him. And that fight against Tetsuya Ando, super, super impressive. Just really caused a lot of damage to Ando, and able to throw just all types of different strikes, combinations, just really a versatile dude. And of all the fights on the card that are just like closest to a pure striker versus grappler matchup, this is definitely it, right? Because Shin Haraguchi, we know he's one of the best wrestlers in the game, but sometimes hasn't always shown a whole lot more than that. His last fight, not the best fight against Hong Junyoung. Really good at wrestling, good at getting guys down, not the best at keeping them down, not the best at throwing strikes while on the ground, or really able to get to submission attempts. I know that's kind of painting it simply. Sometimes he will fight really good grapplers and not able to totally get there, but you kind of see a lot of times somewhere through the third round, it's like he remembers that he can strike actually on the ground. And so I'm curious to see what kind of evolutions, if any, come from Shin Haraguchi. It could be that he can take Zhu Kongjie down. In the last fight, Zhu Kongjie really was able to defend the takedowns pretty well. So I know Tetsuya Ando is not Shin Haraguchi, but I think this could end up being a little bit like the Rongju fight. Think about that from the Road to UFC finals. Maybe he's going to be able to get Zhu Kongjie down. In fact, I think probably he will be able to get him down a couple times. But I think Zhu Kongjie, he's really explosive. I think he's going to be able to get back to his feet and get damage done. So either a late finish, maybe a decision. But Shin Haraguchi, he's got a lot of potential, but he needs to break through that ceiling. So could this be the fight that he breaks through that ceiling? Perhaps. It's only been 3 months since his last fight, but let's see what you got, Shin. I am really looking forward to that fight. All right, now let's hop back over to the to strawweight. Another great fight, one of my most anticipated. Really hate to see either of these women lose, but here you have it. One of perhaps the only China versus China fight on this card, as far as I can remember. Dong Huaxiang versus Shi Ming, and kind of a little bit of a lot of mirror imaging of these two fighters. Dong Huaxiang, she's got a lot more of the hype. She, I think, is a little bit younger than Sherming and really had a lot of hype behind her, took some time off, and now she's back in the swing of things. This is a harder fight to predict than I think a lot of people are giving credit for, because I think Dong has more potential than Sherming, but just given what I saw from the first round, I don't know. I don't know who to side with this, because Dong and Sherming both come from wrestling backgrounds, both really good wrestlers. I think Dong has the more technical boxing, and I think if both are like fighting at the same speed, then I think Dong would like she should win the technical combinations, be able to get the last punch in during exchanges. So like on paper, I think Dong would win the fight, but given their last performances, Dong really did not fight with a lot of urgency in that opening round fight against Priya Sharma. A lot of jabs, a lot of 1-2s, low kicks, things like that. But and she looked good. I mean, she was pretty dominant against Priya. Like by far, just like landed the more impactful strikes, but still not like super engaged. Like she was locked in, looking for that finish. And on the other side, Sherming fought really aggressively when in her opening round fight. She looked great. She fought against Seo Yadam, super close fight. I kind of felt like maybe Seo had won the fight, but Sherming ends up winning it. She lands that just knee from the 7th layer of hell, I believe in the first round, that drops Seo Yadam, and just really fought hard for the finish. And so if these two are striking, if the wrestling cancels out, you could see Sherming just press in more, land the more impactful strikes, initiate the striking exchanges, and she could get the better of each round and win the fight. So it's a really close fight. I don't even know if I can make a prediction on this fight. I'll leave it up to you, what your gut tells you and your brain. But this is going to be a close fight. Love this matchup. Love, these two women, I think, have trained together before. So I think this should be super interesting. Which leads us to the last fight of the card of the whole evening, Xiaobin against Masuto Kawana. I mentioned earlier about how Zhu Kongjie had been the most impressive fighter for me in the opening round. And I stand by that. But I feel like Masuto Kawana showed something that we didn't see from really any of the other fighters. This guy is impossible to put away. He took a lot of heavy damage in that first fight and was able to grit through it and just had his foot to the gas the whole time. Did he tire out a little bit? Maybe, but he looked great. He was if I remember correctly, a pretty big underdog against Song Young Jae. Pretty highly touted Korean prospect. A lot of good punching power on that guy. But yeah, he weathered through it, and he put so much pressure on Song. And almost, if you could contrast him to Shin Hargu. So Shin and Masuto, two guys, both like elite level wrestlers, both like right around, like you could almost put them as like Olympic level wrestlers. And the difference between these two, though, is that what I saw from Kawana is that he's throwing offense while he's wrestling from different angles. He's punching with his other arm, when he's got your leg with this arm, he's got you on the ground. He's trying to throw in some punches as well. So his offense is a lot more rounded out, I think. And gosh, could you imagine, like, I feel like if we got Shin Haraguchi versus Masuto Kawana in the finals, I'd probably pick Kawana. Like, just the two going against each other, you got to side with the guy that lands the more damage. So Kawana, super fun fighter. Probably my favorite fight of all of the opening round fights. But he does have a tall, pun intended here, tall test in front of him in Xiaobin. Xiaobin by now has really good experience in the cage. Very mature fighter, very efficient, methodical. He's fought many times for one championship. He's fought for Road to UFC several times. He's fought in Contender Series. This guy has fought really good competition all throughout his career. And how old is Shebin? 26 years old. So still even a lot of time to grow. You know, I rewatched his last fight against Ibu Gula, and he is the kind of fighter that he was pretty aggressive. He uses his range really, really well. The jab, the cross, the low kicks, even some really nice body punches as well. And he pretty much dominated Ibu Gula. I had no idea Ibu Gula's strategy in that fight. I really didn't understand. So we really didn't even get to see. I thought Ibu Gula was going to try to wrestle with Shebin, but instead he tried to strike with him, which was very strange to me. So we really didn't see the latest in Shebin's wrestling. So obviously, I would think probably Kawana is going to try to wrestle with him. We'll get to see that with Shebin. If you're Shebin, you know you're looking at the knee, you're looking at the uppercut. You're probably going to throw a couple of them to try to take Kawana out because he's the kind of guy that can take a big shot but keep going. So Kawana is going to make Shebin work. I think this is going to be a great test for Shebin because it's going to be a guy that's going to make him work really, really hard. But if you're Shebin, really, it's all about the footwork. You really just got to use your range. Never let this guy get too close. You're going to be on your back foot a lot, but especially you're going to have to circle out to the side. You don't want to get pressed up against the cage. Let's look at the difference in height and reach, just because I'm curious about that. Shebin, 5'9", 71-inch reach, which is pretty solid for a featherweight. Whereas, so he's 3 inches taller and just 2 inches more of reach, which isn't nothing, but it's not astronomical. So it's mostly a height advantage that he's going to have over Kawana. So really, this is a fascinating fight as well. Two totally contrasting styles and figures. Shebin is he's a pretty intelligent fighter, really good at keeping the range, good at just like staying in his zone, peppering with shots at range. And I don't know, you know, it's like when you have a guy like Kawana that just puts so much pressure, even against a fighter that for Shebin, like he may, like I think Shed by far has the better striking, but when there's a guy that puts so much pressure on you and just you're on your back against the wall, you're on your back foot so much, it's hard to really look good against a guy like that. So if Shebin can just make Kawana just hit the air, whether if it's his wrestling or just whiffing on big punches, then he may be able to wear him out a little bit. I'm not saying to the point of defeat, but you could see Shebin pull ahead in the later rounds. This is a hard fight really to break down because it can go a lot of different ways. It really depends on how prepared Shebin is to wrestle. And I think if the fight does get to the ground, then it's going to be Kawana's world. And, this could be a rough night for Shebin. So I don't know. I love that this is the last fight of the evening. Really tremendous, placement there. And even you see like Shebin, he fought Lee Jung-young, lost by armbar. So he does have that submission loss on his record. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying he's a slouch on the ground either. Love this fight. Mostly just am looking forward to it. So there you go. Road to UFC semifinals. Those are my picks and really looking forward to it. Looking forward to being in the arena. Going to have to really lock into my work because I am going to want to a side of me is just going to want to be a fan and clap and go crazy for the fighters. But mostly I just hope that they all have fun and no one gets too badly injured. So there you go. Let's get into your questions. Excited for these. So Makoti, you're asking about Dean Amasinger. Does he travel with the UFC Shanghai roster who will fight at Road UFC? Yeah, I'm learning more and more about the relationship between the UFC PI staff and the fighters. And it sounds like so all of the PI fighters will have other fighters as their corners. So when it comes to all that kind of stuff, the PI staff aren't there. What the PI staff is really there to do is to bring out the best of the fighters. They're there to help them with the weight cuts, help them with warm-ups, help them acclimate to the US and time zone, all of that stuff, make sure they're in the best possible place to succeed. When it comes to actually like, game planning and obviously having a corner in the cage and coaching, that's more of the, whoever the fighter has with them. So yeah, so that's kind of the relationship there. Will I be able to interview Dean at any point? I would be doubtful for this week. Definitely going forward, most likely, yeah. I think that would be great. The thing with Dean is that this week he and the staff have like 7 fighters or something that they're watching over. So they're very busy people. So they got a lot going on. The other thing with the Road UFC is that there aren't any like post-fight interviews or press conferences, unfortunately, for media. There's really not a whole lot of like planned things for media. So I'm not really able to just like roam around and interview people. So it could come together in another way, but probably that'll have to happen later. Did I hear the Chinese PI fighters use the PI sauna from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and didn't let other fighters in? So I didn't. The thing about that, I don't know if I wonder if that was just I'm going to follow up on this, what the exact situation was. I don't know if it was double booked and they just got there first. And then it was like, well, we have to cut weight too, so it's not like we can just leave and let you do it. I think it was a big miscommunication. And I'm wondering if when the Korean fighters got there, like Yusu Young, if the sauna was already full because the fighters were already there and there wasn't any room. So I don't know what the whole situation was there. It didn't seem like it was like malcontent where they were like, yeah, we're going to sabotage your fight, So I don't know what the whole story is, but yeah, it sounded kind of tricky. Sounds crazy and unfair if true. How's it going, my man? Overhand Indonesia. Look up this guy on Twitter and on Instagram if you haven't. Really, I don't know of a better channel to follow if you really want to stay plugged in on Indonesian MMA. You can see his name and logo there. Check it out. All right, James, what you got for me this week? How is screenshotting and shaming any different from MMA dumbest tweets? I remember you saying you liked that account. Why is it wrong if people hate the dude you have interacted with? I follow a community of 10 highly regarded analysts, and one thing that will get hated on is if someone says they're a genius after saying something really dumb. Yeah, I've kind of soured on even MMA dumbest tweets now. I move on. I've said this several times, but like, I'm not a fan of bullying on social media. MMA media is a toxic enough space as it is. And if someone, you always have to let someone's work speak for themselves. If someone's not a genius, if their analyst work isn't that good, most likely they're not going to get a huge following. Or if they do get a huge following, it's going to be because of something else that they bring to the table. So if someone is claiming to be a genius and they have like 100 followers, not really worth my time. I move on. But yeah, I wish that MMA, that the media space was a little bit more fan friendly, but it's hard. It's hard. But yeah, Kira Singh Sahota could be the dark horse. Yeah, that's how I kind of feel. He was even by me, like a lot of Asian MMA fans had no idea who he was because he's, of British nationality, lives and trains at in Manchester, trains at Manchester top team. So he was a dark horse in the sense of that he was pretty unknown. Even in Cage Warriors, I think, who is that guy? The short guy with the big fro. That's really, really fun. He had a pretty interesting fight with him. But look, had an okay run in Cage Warriors, but I think last couple fights has just looked really, really technical and really sharp. So for sure, he's the dark horse for the flyweight division. I think probably him, and my pick would be him versus Choi in the finals. But you could have, wouldn't that be interesting if you had Angad Bish versus Kiro Singh Sahota in the finals? That would be really interesting. The community that I'm a part of hates narcissism, since people in that analyst community are there to learn about fighting, not brag about how smart they are. Sure. I mean, again, you know what I do: block or mute and move on. I only got a little bit of I have a certain amount of emotional energy in one day, and I try to put that towards things that are positive and exciting. And for me, and I try not to waste it on bickering, but whatever floats your boat. Yeah. Yes, you did message me about that. Appreciate that. Not sure if you saw this, but a large account said that no one talks about how inactive Zhang Weili is, and had a picture of her last 3 fights in 17 months. You already disproved this notion. Do I think people like to spread misinformation in order to spread more hate? I think it feels, kind of putting together two pieces that we've talked about in the past. I think the reason why it feels like Zhang is more inactive than other champions is because she's not actively in the English speaking media space. We've talked about both of those things separately, but I think it feels like that. Like another champion that might be inactive, that's regularly doing interviews, you see them popping up on social media, they're still in your headspace, but you may just kind of forget that Zhang is even champion if you're not a big fan of hers. But like, you may just even forget that if, she's not really floating around in your daily social media space. And then you might wonder, like, man, when was the last time she even fought? So I wonder if that's why it feels that way, even though she really competes about the same as other champions, give or take a little bit. But I bet that's why it feels that way. So what's the coaching situation for most of the fighters from China for Road to UFC? Are they able to get the coach's visa? I don't know what the visa situation is particularly. So a lot of the PI fighters have other fighters in their corner. I think Rongju is also cornering someone. I forget who exactly that was. I spoke to Wong, his manager, this week, and he told me, but I was supposed to get some time with Rongju. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, so I think it's different for each one. A lot of those fighters have other like Chinese fighters that are stateside to be their coaches. So I think that's a really good strategy. I'm really happy for Feng Xiaosan that her coach, Yuan Chuanbo, was able to come over. So yeah, I think she's like one of the few fighters kind of like that from China, where they brought like their OG coach over with them. But so I think, yeah, most of them are already stateside. The Craig Jones Invitational of making Dracus du Plessis look sensational. That will take me some time to disentangle. Did you see the Craig Jones Invitational? Mostly just highlights. It was a massive success, and you should check it out when you have the chance. Yeah, I've been so locked into Road to UFC that I haven't really done anything else. And really, when I say locked into Road to UFC, most of that has just been like figuring out logistics and making sure that I'm going to like be able to give a good account of myself. This is the first time that I have gone somewhere truly only representing myself and not writing for another outlet. So there's a lot of things that I'm learning for the first time, and it's been a amazing learning experience in a lot of ways. So I don't have like a team that I can lean on, that I can just be like, hey, what should I do for this? Hey, can you give me this resource? So much of it I'm having to do, like pretty much all of it, figure out by myself. So I've been so locked into Road to UFC that I haven't really even watched much of anything else. I didn't even watch UFC 305 last week, except for the Song Kanan and the Li Jing Liang fight. Really didn't watch much else of the card. A lot of the times I've just been sitting watching past Road to UFC fights just to get myself kind of familiarized with everyone again. But definitely want to go back through that. I love it. It was so fun to see all the enthusiasm for the CJI Craig Jones Invitational. Seems like it was a huge success. I hope that there's a lot more of it. I don't know how often the plans are to do that again and again, but yeah, it seemed like it was a big win, both for the athletes and the fans. It seemed like it was a really well-produced event. A lot of just really good, positive energy. A lot of things that just got people talking, So I am really happy to see that with grappling. I've always kind of felt like there was, there are really cool ways that you can market grappling and make a really fun product for fans. And we've seen some flashes of that throughout the years. There's been a lot of really good things. Even like, I enjoyed watching Medusa over the last couple of years. It was really fun. So there's definitely like cool things going on in grappling, but like this seems like it's tailored to be able to bring in the broadest possible audience for jiu-jitsu. So I know it's still kind of a niche thing, not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but the broadest possible audience looked really cool. Excited to check it out. Why isn't Soyo Kim getting a fight in the UFC? What I heard on that is that she is waiting out her one championship contract. I don't know if that's the latest, so don't quote me on that. Don't say that I said that. But that I heard that a while ago, that she was waiting that out. That was why she didn't go to the UFC, was because she was still stuck in her one contract. And I think she's just kind of waiting it out for that to die out. So hopefully not too much longer. But yeah, I mean, she's still on the UFC website. I would assume if she's ever cleared to come to the UFC, then she's going to do it. But she'll have been out of action for a long time. It's too bad. Do I know of the oxymoronic term in MMA called close but clear? That is very oxymoronic. The thing about MMA judging, saying anything is clear acts like everyone is on the same page when we know we're not. Yeah, the people claiming a fight was clear or a round was clear for a certain person, I think is definitely overused. I understand. I think if you're going to say a fight or a round is close but clear, just because a fight or a round is clear doesn't mean that the other fighter wasn't just a couple steps behind them the whole time. There's fights that go back and forth where it's like both fighters landed a lot of damage, but this fighter was the one that landed the knockdown. So I think what that means is that it was competitive, right? I think competitive is maybe a little bit more of a better word for that. Competitive but clear towards the winner. But yeah, very few people have taken like a course in MMA judging, and MMA judging does not always go towards it doesn't lean towards the person that optically people think should have won the fight. Especially there's lots of different rule sets around the world, which is that's hard. Because for fighters, then they have to make the switch. Even there was a couple Road to UFC fighters that felt like they had won fights, but they actually lost. and they were trying to do different things than what the judges were actually looking for. So, which is, not necessarily an excuse. Your coaches, you should be accountable to really know what the rules are. But, Ija is who I'm thinking of. So, yep, judge and be whack. Interesting discussion to have is, should refs take a fighter's history of recovering after being hurt into account? I think if you ask different people, you'll get different responses. Yeah, so like if you have like a 42-year-old fighter who's been around the block for a long time, are you going to step in and protect that fighter quicker than you would a young fighter? Personally, refocus there. Personally, I think if I was a judge, I'm looking at signs in the cage. If I can see if a fighter, if he doesn't react well to damage, and I think you should be a little bit more objective towards like, yeah, he's not able to intelligently defend himself. He's gotten knocked down 4 times by now. I'm not gonna give him a very long leash going forward. I don't know so much if that really should factor into it, because if you're a fighter, if you're signing that contract, if you're signing the waiver, you're stepping in the cage, you are consenting to terrible things to be done to your body. And so a referee is there to do their job, but I don't know that they should necessarily like step in quicker than they would, if because whether you're 42 or 24, you're in that cage and you've consented to this, you've consented to the violence. So, but the referee needs to know, like, hey, the tricky thing is that there are fighters that wear damage differently, and there are some fighters who are zombies. They can get beaten down over and over again, but they're always going to keep moving, whether it's super intelligent or not. But I think it does help to know. I think where I would kind of come part way with that is knowing how a fighter behaves when they've been hurt. Some fighters, they can be dazed and kind of be clamoring around, reaching for a leg to try to use a takedown, but it's not always very intelligent. So kind of having that awareness of like, yeah, this is a fighter that he's probably going to get knocked out, not going to get knocked out, or she's probably not going to get knocked out. But they just wear damage and react to damage a little bit differently. So I think that is good to know, but I don't necessarily think that like, just because a fighter is maybe older and shop worn, that, two strong punches that kind of like move them back to the cage, stagger them a little bit. I still feel like you need to give them that leash to be able to recover intelligently fight their way back into the competition. So they signed up for it. So there you have it. And there you go. And you agree. Answer should be no. To add to my earlier point, you don't have to agree with how that guy last week was treated, but you do have to understand the analyst community do not take kind to people who brag about being right. They are about being humble, learning, and sharing good content. When somebody tries to act the way that guy did and have analysts in his hand, expect a backlash. Okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, it's if you've worked really, really hard to get where you are, and someone claims that they're on equal footing with you, even though they haven't put in that kind of work, they haven't proven themselves, then I can definitely understand the backlash. And if you're going to put that handle, I mean, the other thing is that you should always expect the worst from the MMA community. So if you're going to promote yourself as an analyst and you're not putting out great analytical work, and it's very low quality, then you should expect that there's going to be backlash. You should expect the worst from the MMA community. So that's why I don't promote myself as an analyst. You won't see that in any of my, if you go on my YouTube, you'll see a playlist that says you might see a playlist that says analysis, just to group all the times that I tried to do that the best I could. But I don't brand myself as an analyst. I cast a pretty wide net to just media member. Sometimes I do journalistic work. But so I do understand where you're coming from, and I understand the frustration with someone that is trying to be in the club but hasn't really proven themselves. So I do agree with you there. Wins don't happen in isolation. For every feel-good story in fighting, there's a graveyard of broken bones and dreams. Gosh, that's dark. How do you think the fan base should treat losers? With shame and memes or respect? I've only seen a few people in MMA media give losers respect. It's very rare. I would say most of the top professional people do it. It's always praise for the winner and scorn and derision and even jokes for the loser. I mean, you don't see that from the most professional of people. It's very unprofessional to do that. So more of the middling to lower tier MMA media, sure, you'll probably see that. And with that, there's a lot of emotions that come into play, maybe even some fan loyalties that come in there too, with the derision. But I think if someone makes an ass of themselves in the cage, if they gave a really bad account for themselves or are just again, you should expect the worst from the MMA fan base. So if you're in there flipping the bird and you get knocked out, if you're in there making an ass of yourself, then yeah, you should expect that you're going to get some pretty strong hate for that. There's certain things that kind of unilaterally draw the ire of just about everybody. And a few times where I've even seen some of the more A-level media members at least kind of be like, yeah, you can see why people are upset with this fighter. They express their opinions, but in a very professional way. And I tend to try to do the same with that, not saying at all I'm an A-level media member, but if I have strong criticisms of a fighter or if I just really don't like someone, you're probably not going to, it'll be a little bit more silence from me. But yeah, I wish that people would treat each other with respect. But you can't have nice things in the MMA space. We can't have nice things. Andrea Mion, hey, welcome. I believe that's the first time I've seen your name on here. Brazilian, firstly, sorry for my horrible English. So far, great. No, I mean, props to you for trying. We all got to start somewhere. Congratulations on the channel. Do you know the biggest event of Latin America name is Jungle Fight? Saturday, we'll have the next event. Yeah, I mean, anytime I hear on an LFA broadcast, this is a Jungle Fight champion, usually that's someone you got to watch out for. So, typically I don't follow Brazilian MMA super closely, but yeah, Jungle Fight, one of the best promotions in Brazil. I went ahead and just pulled up that card here. Obviously, I'm not going to go too deep into here, but looks like we got 2 title fights on top of this Jungle Fight card. Main event, 170-pound title fight, and then co-main is the heavyweight title fight. You got a 4-0 heavyweight fighting for the belt there, Raimundo Costa. All of his wins are in the first round, all 4 of his wins. So, and then I recognize a couple of these other fighters. Brenda Cordozo. Where have I heard that name before? Was she on Contender Series? Jungle Fight, veteran, LFA. Okay. Yeah, Yeah, no, she's fought a lot. And hey, to tie it back to Asian MMA here, it looks like we've got a Korean fighter on this Jungle Fight card. Lee Sung Jae. Interesting. Says he trains out of MMA Story in Korea. 3-2 fighter, so still kind of getting his feet wet, but looks like they're bringing him over. He's fought in Black Combat before, so a little bit of an intersection between our two worlds there. Very interesting. Fighting 1-0 Gabriel Sperto. Just letting you know, there's a lot of fighters with really good records on this card for sure. A lot of fights too. Good grief. 17 fights on that card. I'm sure I'll be seeing highlights from the Jungle Fight show. Very cool. Are you able to access the UFC PI as well as the Apex? I know they're two different things. Yeah, they are like farther away from each other than I thought they were. The land there is huge. And as I was rolling up today, there is construction equipment everywhere around the Apex. It really does look like they're about to knock down some walls and hopefully expand the Apex. I haven't asked around on that, but it does look like there's a lot of work about to be done at the Apex, but they're pretty far. I don't even know if you would want to walk in between. I think you would almost want to drive, but they've got a ton of space, a ton of open space that's unused. I know at one point they're supposed to build like a fighter hotel. The hotel that the fighters are staying at for both Road to UFC and for the UFC event this Saturday. It's the same hotel. I saw a lot of fighters from the Fight Night show also at the same hotel. It's like pretty far down the strip. Like it's a good 15-minute drive from the UFC facilities. So that'd be really nice to have a fighter hotel there. Would save the UFC a lot of money and would be a lot more accessible. So getting into the PI, I don't have access to that. Really, as media, like I have access to pretty much nothing. I can come to the Apex for the scheduled things that that are open to me as media, and then everything else I have to get permission to. So there was a couple things at the PI. Really hope that something will come through. I'd love to get to go to the PI, but there was a couple opportunities actually for me to go to the PI this week, do an interview and photo shoot with more than one fighter, but things just kind of changed around. Someone needed a blood test, blah, 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 blah. But basically, yeah, I'd have to like someone else would have to like contact security or something and get me cleared to be able to go in there. I definitely can't just walk in. I was surprised the Apex, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but like the Apex, I could just like drive there and park and walk up to the door. I think the PI, you may have to go through a security checkpoint, but yeah, have to get special permission. So we'll see if that comes through. Don't know if it will. If it's not, it's fine, but would love to get to go on the PI. Pay $5 for Ghost Substack in Miguel Class's Patreon. They have some negative ideas about Adesanya's footwork where they showed moments of crossing feet. That's a big no-no. Thought it was informative, but I've seen people in the comments that said Adesanya was never good to begin with. Well, that's obviously not true. How do you get to be a UFC champion and defend the belt that many times and not be very good? I know a lot of people are saying the same thing about Dracus du Plessis, that he's the best worst fighter in the middleweight division. But yeah, we all know. I mean, Adesanya is legit. I both think these guys. These guys, they have praised his footwork in the past. I don't get how some people can come to that conclusion after two breakdowns. I know it's not their intention, but weird. No. Yeah, weird opinions. I wonder if there's some fan bias in there as well. Gave me my spiel about colonialism last week. Excuse me. So I want to go into detail this week. How does it make you feel when racism wins? I don't care what was said after, but what was said before. And then did you go on there? What was said before? So sounds like you're maybe talking about the du Plessis versus Adesanya situation. where there were some kind of funky things said beforehand, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And then it seems like they've kind of patched things up. Now everything is very like, hold hands. We're both African champions. Everything is good. And it just makes me wonder if some of that wasn't a little bit of an act beforehand and not like truly deeply held beliefs. I don't know. It's so hard to interpret how people actually see the world when there's like the fight rhetoric, you know? And, you know, unfortunately, fighters that hold racist beliefs win all the time in MMA. And it is frustrating because those are the people that get the microphone a lot and they get a lot of exposure. And it is frustrating to see that. And especially when you see it really like fueling things. And you know, it's tough. It's just the way, you know, I had an anthropology professor. So I got my degree in cultural anthropology. And my professor was the closest person that I've ever met to Indiana Jones in my life. Probably 6'5", 60-year-old Dutch man, long flowing white hair, white beard, fluent in like 12 languages, Mr. International, if you will. He also was like a professional advocate for a lot of indigenous people groups in the American Northeast, where he would actually go to court with them, advocate for their rights, restoring their land, a lot of those things. And then I'll never forget this. He always said, everyone, even the anthropologists, are all a little bit racist. He was like, even me, even my own experience with anthropology, I've still got some racism hidden deep within me. And I'm not saying this to excuse anybody, but I think that there is in a lot of people, and it just comes out so much more easily with nationalistic pride. It gets hard to disentangle patriotism with nationalism with racism, because patriotism can get excited and become nationalism. Nationalism can get out of hand, become racism. It's it's tough. What I like to see, I do like to see when fighters kind of change their way, repent. The Adesanya Duplessis situation, it seems like things are in a better place now. I appreciate the respect that he gave, the affirmation that both fighters gave to each other of being good African champions. So that's how I think about it. It's just, it's something that I've kind of gotten used to, honestly, a little bit, when fighters that have held racist views win. It happens in politics too. You see politicians and you just kind of have to grit your teeth and push back where you feel like it's appropriate for you to do so. But unfortunately, it is a reality of our world. Dana doesn't seem to give a care anymore about promotion. They seem to be fine with the cash they make from their TV deal and have more in the works. They know they'll make a big gate given the fighters being at home. Izzy isn't the new sexy thing anymore. Dana acts miserable, and every interview seems to hate this sport and probably salty. And it's probably salty Trump's numbers have dipped. Oh, that is hilarious. Do you think he's more interested in being a bigger public figure than promoter? I think I see both sides of that. I think Dana has I think he has changed a little bit. I do think at his core, he is truly a fight fan. I don't think that I think that in a lot of ways, he's really, really good at his job. I think that he does still have a lot of passion for the sport, and he's a magnetic personality for a lot of people, and he still kind of has that like down to earth personality in a lot of ways. Not saying every way, but he breaks out of the like corporate cleanliness, which I think endears a lot of fans to himself. But I do wish that he would. I don't know. It seems like it becomes more and more clear to me that there is a very specific product of the UFC that he wants to cultivate. And if things don't really fit into that product, then he's not really going to give his time and his energy building it up. What he wants is every single event, as much as he can control, every single UFC event, he wants it to be full of holy shit moments. He wants to have as many holy shit fighters on his roster as he can. It's not about having the top 50 best fighters in each weight class in the world. It's not about having the most skilled fighters. He really, like, if Contender Series has really shown us like as many holy shit moments as they can pack into a single event. That's what he wants to do. And when fighters kind of drag their feet to sign contracts, when fighters are not just down to like fight over and over and over again, producing, outrageous moment after outrageous moment, that really gets on his bad side. You saw that in the Fight Inc. documentary with Aljamain Sterling. Sterling was like, kind of like, I don't know, wanting to look out for himself and make sure things fell into place well for himself with his health, everything, the timelines, and the UFC was really pressuring him to take the fight. And that was frustrating that Sterling was dragging his feet to really like fit into their plans. So I think anything that kind of falls out of line with that. And the UFC is just so big now that like Dana himself can't literally promote everything with the same amount of energy and intensity. He used to be at every single event. He's not anymore. And I can understand that. I really can. I guess we'll see if he's at these Road to UFC fights on Friday night, unless he's out of town, whatever. I don't know why he wouldn't. It's just down the road. So it's just like Contender Series. So I would expect that he would be there. But I can understand the criticisms that people have towards promoting fights as well. I would promote fights a little bit differently if I were him, but he also does a lot of things really, really well, and so much of the success of the UFC, I think you can attribute to him, his personality, his style of things. So he's a complicated figure for sure. Does the ESPN Plus actually work for anyone? It buffers constantly, essentially unwatchable. Does this validate more illegal streams when the current service is unreliable? I do think so. If you can't rely on ESPN Plus to watch events, then yeah, illegal streams are gonna definitely grow in popularity. I've had a couple things with ESPN, and I do constantly have glitches with ESPN. I think I've only once had the experience where I wasn't able to watch something. For me, it's just like I go on to ESPN Plus, and then I have to click around a little bit. Sometimes a little bit hard to find things because there's so much on ESPN Plus. But yeah, sometimes hard to find things, hard to find like, where's the library here? And I definitely have to click on the video once, nothing happens, it just buffers. I have to click on it again, and then it takes me to a login page. I have to log in. Then I have to click on the video again. It's just like you kind of have to be persistent to get the video. Usually once I've got the video playing for me, it works okay. There was a situation where I was at a friend's house trying to watch a pay-per-view, and on their TV, they were trying to buy the pay-per-view through their TV. And it was this funky situation where they got on the phone with ESPN Plus support, and they're like, okay, go on your phone, buy the pay-per-view on your phone, then log back into your TV. So dumb. I mean, I've heard literally that exact same problem many times, and apparently it hasn't gotten fixed, at least not to my knowledge. So I don't know. It seems like things are changing with ESPN Plus. There was like the potential bundle that Disney was going to have with like a couple other broadcasters like Fox, I think. So I'm wondering if things are going to change a little bit. Just the setup of things. One of the reasons why I love it when things are on UFC Fight Pass is because it's a platform that is there just for fights. So easy to find things like I really do miss the days when UFC events, and usually it was the more international events, those used to stream in their completion on Fight Pass. Like a lot of the Asian events for UFC would be on Fight Pass. Man, those were the days, and no commercials, living the dream. Fight Pass was great. Francis Ngannou's opponent just made fun of his son dying. Why act classless like that? I need to review that because I saw that there was a lot of confusion and misunderstanding. I saw that like Hinata Moicano and Gilbert Burns both said like, he didn't say that. It was a bad translation. So I'm not going to comment on that just because I think that there's still some confusion what the intent of Renan Ferreira's words were. So I'm going to refrain from commenting on that because I don't want to bury the guy if that's not what he meant. You leave a lot of the pressure up to the translator. So I need to check my Twitter feed after this podcast and see if there's been any more aftermath from that. But what it sounded like he said was the original quote was something like, I know he's had a really hard year, but I'm going to be an even bigger problem. Something like that, of like minimizing what happened with his family, with his son tragically passing away. So it did sound pretty insensitive. At least that was the rendering that the translator gave it. So yeah, it's very tricky. I don't want to take either side here. But I can definitely hope that that's not what the intent was. Yo, we got the matchmaker on here. Hey, this is another guy you guys should follow. I think a lot of you probably do, but if you just want to like get all the like really, really quick news on a lot of different stuff, this is a great guy to follow as well. So yeah, follow the matchmaker on Twitter. Very fun follow. Just got here. Do we think the road to UFC finals will take place at the Macau event or as random as an event at the Shanghai PI? I did actually ask about this today. I asked another staffer, and it sounds like the plan is to have the finals at Macau. That's the plan. Now, I say that that's the plan because if multiple fighters are not healthy after tomorrow night's event, then you can't just sub in somebody to fight in the finals. I think you need to respect the fighters that have fought through 2 rounds, although 2 fighters did get a bye in the first round. But I think if you have a couple fighters that can't make it, I don't know how they really handle it. If they we had the situation with Lee Chong Ho and Xiao Long. You remember that this year, where they had to postpone the final to the Riyadh card. So you could have a situation like that, but I think the plan is that as many of the finals that they can get on that Macau card, that they are going to do that. So I did hear that today. So that's and some of the staff were really they're asking me about coming out to Macau in November, and I gave a very like, oh, we'll see. I would love to come out to Macau. That's obviously a lot more logistics than coming out to Las Vegas. So we'll see, but that'd be cool. Dream final, Bisht versus Sahota. that stylistically, that would be really, really fun. If nothing else, a lot of other interesting storylines that would go into that for sure. I know it's heavyweight MMA where the standards are low, but there is no point in making a classless statement like Renan Fajeda. There you go. Curious, did you manage to get any sight of a renovation site? They said it'll be renovated, so just curious if you managed to spot anything like that. I did see a lot of construction equipment. Kind of mentioned that already, but it does look like there's going to be something going on at the Apex. I don't know. Some folks said that after November, it was going to be closed for like 6 months. I don't know about that. I guess if I find myself in conversation with someone that would know about that, I'll ask them, but I don't know. Said you used to work for Sportskeeda. Did they pay you a good amount? Actually, and you got more of the question. Did Sportskeeda ever give you opportunities to write about nuanced things in MMA, like some topics that get brought up in this chat room? I would not say that's why they hired me. The reason that Sportskeeda hired me was to cover the news. Sorry, my camera just like randomly shuts off every now and then. I think it's got to be one of the adapters that I'm using. The reason that Sportskeeda hired me is that they wanted people to cover the beat for one championship. And what that was like interviews that they had throughout the internet where one championship fighters had done interviews, places. They would do any kind of like previews, breakdowns, and then just like news releases too. So that was what they hired me, and they would just assign me stuff. Like they would assign me interviews. Like I would have to watch through an interview and then summarize and add the quotes in there. Pretty much every website does this in some regard. So they did not hire me to like give really like heartfelt critique, and that's fine. At that point, I was really why I wanted to work for them was just I just wanted to get more reps in. I really just wanted to practice writing, even the skill of watching an interview and making an article out of it. That's a skill, and there's a way that you can be more exciting and I think more well written than others. So not every single article in MMA has to be like an editorial or, I did to the best of my ability. I wasn't there to puff people up. I wasn't there to be one championship's PR. I just wanted to summarize the interviews. I wanted to tell what happened and just do good reporting. So I wasn't there to like be biased at all because I wanted to be a good reporter. And to be honest, Sportskeeda did actually pay pretty well. And I appreciate that. And for Sportskeeda, I think I've talked about them before. The people I worked with there were very good to me and very generous. They paid very generously, and it was not a bad place to work. And I am really appreciative of that opportunity. So I'm not going to talk shit on them. Did I align with all of the, the style, the way that they want to go about things? No, there were some differences, and there was different ways that I wanted to cover the sport that I couldn't do for them. And so there was a couple reasons why I had to drop off with them. I also had some personal things come up in life that I just couldn't keep up with the schedule. And so I was like, hey, I got to step away. I think that was the biggest reason why I did, but I have respect for the people that I worked with. Do we have some different philosophies on things? Sure. But I really appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, they paid pretty well. What hotel are you staying at, and have you tried the food yet? I am staying at the Oyo Hotel, OYO. And it's just off the strip. So it's right by the Mandalay Bay or MGM Grand. It's right by the MGM Grand. the big bluish green building that's got David Copperfield on the side. And then across the street from New York. So kind of more on the south side of the Vegas Strip. I'm staying here because I got a good deal on Groupon, honestly. So it's so interesting when you're booking a hotel in Las Vegas. This is so weird. It's kind of tricky and a little bit deceptive because if you go on like hotels.com or just go to a Google map and search hotels in Las Vegas, everything that pops up is like $15 a night, $20 a night. You're like, whoa, so cheap. And then once you go through the checkout, it's like, oh, and there's also a $70 resort fee every single day. So really it's like $80 a night, which is still not bad. So it's kind of tricky like that, but I had a good deal with Groupon. I weighed all the options. I like that it was not like right on the strip, but a little bit off to where it's like, we've got our own parking lot. The parking lot's chill, easy to get in and out of. But the Oyo Hotel, it's okay. It's okay. Honestly, this is really, really funny. And I've filmed a lot of this. I don't know if I'll ever release it, but like, this hotel is hysterical. I think that almost every single elevator in Las Vegas is broken. There's three elevators in this hotel. All three of them are broken. There's like a service elevator in like some really dank, like employees only room. That is the only working elevator. It's super slow and a really smelly room. And then if I want to take the stairs, I have to walk through all these like employee only things and go to this like super dark, kind of creepy staircase. So like, that's really weird. I've been here since Tuesday and still haven't fixed any of the elevators. So many of like the doorknobs in this hotel are either missing or falling off. Like literally some of the doors I have to like grab from the side and like pry open. Others of them are like hanging on by a thread. There's a lot of things in this hotel that are a little bit lacking. There is a pool with a bunch of palm trees, and I may check that out this evening. So I'm the kind of I'm not too picky with hotels. It's like, as long as it's not stinky, and as long as it's clean and the bed is comfortable, I don't really care. And as long as I didn't pay a whole lot of money. So I didn't pay a whole lot, got a good Groupon deal. There's like apparently the biggest Hooters in North America is in this hotel. There's also like a Steak and Shake here. So there's a couple of restaurants. Haven't tried the food yet. But I did try the food in the Fighter Hotel when I was there yesterday, and they've got like a little food court there. And I had some poke there that was really good. So that hotel seemed like it was a little bit better off. But yeah, there's a big casino in here, like every hotel. It's a good time. It's an adventure. Can't complain too much. I'm very low maintenance. What do you think there are styles in MMA that cause less damage than other fighters? Does style come from a fighter's personality, or is it just training habits? Probably training habits. There's a lot of fighters that come from wrestling backgrounds or judo backgrounds, even jiu-jitsu, where the style is less oriented towards damage. It's more about control. Even like karate or taekwondo, you can obviously be really, really damaging with that style, thinking about Lyoto Machida. But there are some fighters that, I guess you could even have a boxing focused style where things are really just focused on minimizing damage, right? Winning the fight while taking as little damage as possible, which you could criticize as being boring, but at the same time, I think I understand where some of these fighters are coming from, where they're really trying to safeguard their own health. They're trying to make a living in the sport. They're trying to make as much money as they can, and they want to protect their own health as much as possible. I can understand that. May not be the most fan-friendly style. You may miss out on some opportunities. You may not get a lot of post-fight bonuses, but I can understand it. So I think trying to minimize damage, protect your health is one thing. Also, backgrounds and training. So thinking about like Shin Haraguchi, for example, exceptional wrestler. Hasn't really mixed in a whole lot of offensive striking or submissions just yet, but really, really effective at just the wrestling. Was listening to Hey Not the Face, and they mentioned the Manny Pacquiao versus Paradigm. They said Manny was scummy for doing what he did and still won because Paradigm wasn't licensed in California. Huh. What are your thoughts on that situation? I don't really remember that a whole lot. I don't know if I can really comment on that. I do briefly remember something about that, but I don't know if I have a whole lot of thoughts on that right now. Very interesting though. Appreciate the weigh-in coverage for Road to UFC. Usually don't see that much coverage on that. Yeah, I was really happy to give Road to UFC weigh-ins kind of the white glove treatment and treat it like it was a bigger event. I think these fights are just as exciting as UFC fights. I think that while they may not be full UFC fights, that fans that really lock in and engage are really going to be glad that they did. And so for a lot of people, they just need the exposure, and like the live comments on my stream today, which is blowing up with Korean fans, and very appreciative. Thank you for the stream. So yeah, I was really happy. A lot of really passionate fans that don't have a great way to follow their fighters. So at least like in the weigh-in process, so I was happy to be able to do that. I've always wanted one of my favorite media content things with MMA is when people do live commentary on weigh-ins, talking about what's happening. I love that. It feels like it's just a very different pace and vibe for MMA. We're not yelling, we're not running around a cage, but it's, very chill and subdued. I love that. And if you know anything about me, if you watch this podcast, much more my speed, much more, of a chill, subdued kind of guy. So I'd always dreamed of being able to do some kind of commentary, and it's tough to multitask and like fill in results on your website, tweet it out. Every fighter that walked up, I took a picture when they weighed in, and then I was doing the commentary as well. So 4 different things that I was juggling all at once, but it was a great experience. I learned a lot and relished the opportunity to get to do that golf style commentary for sure. I don't know if a fighter would allow you to do this, but if you got to film a fighter from Road and do it embedded style, who would you choose from this crop? Like Road FC? I don't know if I'm using the word crop right. Maybe batch was the better word. Yeah, I would love. So filming, you mean like follow alongside them and like film kind of like their fight week process and weight cut and training, hanging out in the city. Yeah, kind of embedded style. I would love that. Yeah, that would be a dream. And I think in the future, that will probably be something I would ask about for sure. I think I would have to have like the really good relationship with the whole team to where they trust me to do that. I think I would also need to have a track record of having exceptional video production. And I think I'm coming along there with like the editing and got some like basic skills, but I think I need a little bit more practice in video production, which this week I've been filming a lot as the week has been going on, and most of that will probably never be posted. But for me, it was just kind of an experience thing of like, okay, let's just get more and more professional. And, I wouldn't want to do that and then create crappy content. So yeah, that's definitely something I would want to do in the future, really getting to allowing fans to have a behind the scenes look. I would love Korean fighters, Choi Dong-hoon or Yusu Young. Yusu Young would be really fun. I think he's got a pretty strong fan base, a lot of passionate fans. And I'm tight with some of those people that are around him. So that would have been really fun to do that. Honestly, the Shanghai bunch, I actually got to meet one of like the social media guy that follows them around, and they'll post little clips on social media. He does a great job posting highlights. I got to meet him and it's just like, dude, great job on your work so far. But it seems like they kind of have things covered. That would be a pretty big undertaking just because they're such a big group. So that would be a little bit tricky to figure out how to like cover them as a whole, you know? I think that's how you'd want to think about it. Almost like an ensemble cast of a movie where you're spending time with that would take some really intentional planning of how do we really show people the personality of each fighter and how they relate to each other. You may want to have like 2 or 3 camera people for that. Otherwise, I think it could be interesting. I think On God Bish would be another guy I would love to follow around, just because I don't know that he has a whole lot. He has a massive fan base. He has way more Instagram followers than anyone else. Like 200,000 more Instagram followers than anyone else. But I feel like he doesn't get quite enough love from folks outside the Indian MMA community. So I would love to do that. That would be really fun. Other than that, I mean, there's a lot. It'd be fun to. I think there's a lot of really capable Japanese media members that would do a great job following around the Japanese fighters. And for me, like, it would just be harder for me to, I think, interact with the Japanese folks just because the language barrier. The Korean fighters, I know a lot of them are bilingual. I speak a little bit of Chinese, and there's a lot of bilingual people around the Chinese fighters, so that could work a little bit better just for me to know like what is going on, you know? So yeah, that would be really fun though. I would really relish that for sure. Do I think that the ex blue checkmark craze among MMA accounts is a grift? Interesting. I was arguing with one of these blue check accounts about engagement baiting and how it's a con. Do you think engagement baiting is a con? Well, I mean, it says it all in the name right there of bait. Even we've talked about how to define the word clickbait before. Yeah, I think I don't really judge people that do have the blue check. Now, there's perfectly respectable accounts that do have the blue check, and there's even smaller accounts that are fine that have the blue check. So I don't want to judge anyone just for having it. But there's definitely a lot of people that will post like polls or really wacky things that I suspect are for engagement for sure. Or they could just not know any better. You know, they could be a newer or less educated fan that is just trying to hop in the conversation or stir shit up and you know, I don't know how much they're really getting paid for it. Even like I haven't looked into it at all, getting a blue check to see how much engagement, because there's every once in a while I'll have stuff that gets really good engagement, but and it's not a bad thing to get paid for your work. It's great when Instagram or Facebook does that. It's not often, but it's nice. It's nice when YouTube does that. But yeah, especially if you're not really looking at this as like, sorry, I keep like drifting over to the side here. I've got a really weird setup. If you, I like pulled the table on the side over to the middle of the room, and then everything's kind of like off to the left of the table. So it's a really weird setup. I'm not always sure like where I should be in the space outside of my own studio. So sorry if I'm like not always centered correctly. Yeah, I would imagine they're probably not making a whole lot of money. Never miss a post-fight Dana press conference, always entertaining. He doesn't hold back like with the Marab situation. There you go. That's why Dana White is Dana White, and that's why in a lot of ways, hey, we could even connect this to the last question about engagement baiting. I don't think that Dana's trying to engagement bait. I don't think he's like Dana doesn't need to engagement bait, but so much of what he says gets a lot of engagement. It gets people talking. It creates a lot of the buzz that people can hop into and debate. So in some ways that's good for the sport. In other ways, obviously I disagree with a lot of the points that he has with the Marab situation. Like Marab posts a picture of a cut on his head. People are speculating that he could be out of the O'Malley fight, which again, like who is it? I think it was Ariel Hawani talking about the McGregor Chandler situation this last June. It's like things like this happen all the time. Every single UFC event, fighters almost drop out. There's shaky situations. There's cuts, and it's like if you don't post about it, no one knows about it. So, yeah, I can understand and understand this too. Can you imagine Dana's heart rate if something happened to the UFC Noche main event? You notice how many times Dana mentions, yeah, we're not doing this kind of thing again. Yeah, we've sunk so much money into this. Because also look at this, that card only has 10 fights rather than the typical 13. Why do you think it's only 10 fights? Because for every single fighter on the card, they have to produce tons of graphics for the Sphere. And so you think about like a movie with a lot of special effects. Think about Transformers. Really, really expensive movie because they have to pay the visual effects artists all this money for all these special effects. So the more special effects shots a movie has, the more expensive it is because the more they have to pay to the visual effects artists. So in the same way for Noche UFC, the more fighters are on the card, the longer the event is, the more expensive it is to create all these graphics, which they don't, for UFC event, for every other UFC event, they kind of they've got all the systems, the styles already set up. They just have to plug in, the video that they take, the photos for each thing, customized for each event. But for the Sphere, they've got to use a whole different process, perhaps even different software. Man, what I really hope what the UFC is doing right now is doing like a behind the scenes documentary on like the creation of Noche UFC. I want to go into the visual effects offices and see them creating some of the graphics. I really want to see some of the nuts and bolts of how they are making this event and helping everyone to appreciate all the work that's going into it. I don't know what they're preparing, if it's going to, really cover the whole screen the whole time. But I got to think that's why it's so expensive. And that's why anytime like with the whole Marab situation, Dana was just like, we can't have this main event fall out. We've invested way too much so far to make a last minute change. Man, I really hope that they have a good backup fighter. And I hope that they maybe even have like some things prepared for that backup fighter, because that would just be catastrophic for them if they lost that top fight. Gosh. Sorry, you had more of your question, Rio, about engagement bait, especially since that account caters to dumb fans instead of fans like the people in this chat that are inquisitive and know the sport. That's right. The MMA ecosystem live chat has the best fans. Y'all know the sport. You know what's good. You know what to watch for. That's right. You all push me to do my best work, so I appreciate that from all of you. Who is in the wrong when the translations are bad in general? Probably the translator and the promotion. It's hard. It's hard to like really, really know how good a translator is. It's probably a lot just on like word of mouth and reputation. Um, it depends on that translator's command of English as well. So you can get a native speaker, but the native speaker has to have an impeccable command of English as well. They've got to have the most extensive vocabulary. So when there's a situation where there's not a direct translation, the translator needs to be able to hash out the nuance. If there's maybe two different words, they need to be able to communicate best, or even use both words, kind of communicate the nuance of the difficulty of translation. So it is tough, but probably I think the fault is equally on the translator and the promotion. You really got to do your due diligence. You can't just have your buddy who is Brazilian and has pretty good English, but he's your buddy. You can't just because I think this is a good lesson for the PFL of just like, okay, this the story of this press conference was not the story that we were hoping it would be. At the same time, buzz is buzz, so it's getting people talking about the fight. So in that regard, it's a win for the PFL, but it's definitely not the kind of buzz that Renan Ferreira wanted out of this fight for sure. Will Road to UFC ever have a focus on Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, etc.? I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day here in Vegas about the Central Asian fighters, and I don't think that they will be in Road to UFC. I would love to. Hopefully, I can get some time with some folks to just talk about how Road to UFC might develop in the next couple years, because it seems to me like already in Road to UFC, there's kind of two different tiers. There's China, Korea, Japan, and then there's everybody else. And then another tier could be like the Kazakh, Kyrgyz fighters. Their style is just so much different, and you could see a day. I wonder if we'll get a day when Road to UFC, like imagine this. Imagine if Road to UFC was just China, Korea, Japan, and then they threw in Central Asia as well. I could see them doing that just to get a little bit broader, to kind of shift things towards East and Central Asia. A lot of great fans in Central Asia, very passionate, really talent-rich regions, and could provide some really interesting challenge for more of the East Asian fighters. I feel like those regions are separate, and for them right now, like even the time zones for Road to UFC line up really well. So once you start getting into Central Asia, that's a lot of distance to cover. And I mean, now that I think about it, in the US, we have, at least in the 48 states, we have 4 different time zones. Somewhere like Kazakhstan is a pretty big country. I'm not sure if they have, I think they just have one time zone. China just has one time zone, which is pretty nuts. But I think broadcast wise, it makes sense to stay within, but they do have, then again, they do have the Indian fans as well, the Indian fighters. So yeah, I don't know. It just feels like they're just a little bit separate. And I wonder if a lot of those fighters from Central Asia, they are oftentimes, I think the better fit for them is to go to Contender Series or go to like LFA, something like that. I heard what I was talking about with someone the other day is that it's tough. Like, I don't know if the UFC just wants to open the floodgates to lots of Central Asian fighters. And I think what they were saying is that, yeah, there's a lot of really good fighters from these countries. And the reason that you don't always see them, like every single one of them signed like right away, is because of the Ramadan thing. And it's really hard if like imagine if a third of your roster can't fight for 3 months of the year, or Ramadan's not that long, 2 months of the year. And so then like these shows in like the Middle East, you just have to load them up with all of your Muslim fighters, practicing Muslim fighters. There's already a lot of fighters from Dagestan, and the UFC wants to grow in the Middle East. I wonder if the UFC were to really increase the number of shows that they did in the Middle East, both in Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia, if we would see the UFC, because there's a lot of Kazakh fighters that you see just kind of spinning their wheels in local promotions. It's like they've won a belt, now they're changing weight class, 17-1. Why isn't the UFC signing them yet? It was like that way with Asu Almobayev. It was like that with Bekzat Almahan. Everyone was like, why isn't the UFC signing these guys? And I feel like there is a limited number of, this is just a theory. I mean, the person I was talking to, I don't know if I would say that they were an authority on that with the UFC, but it sounded like, yeah, the UFC can't just open the floodgates and just load up their roster with every worthy Central Asian, Muslim, Middle Eastern, or Dagestani fighter, because the Ramadan thing does make things really tricky. So there's kind of almost like a limited number of spots. I don't know how true that is, so don't quote me on that, but it is an interesting idea, and I could definitely see that being true. So I don't know what the future is with the Kazakh guys. Really not a lot of them have come to Contender Series. A couple of them have gone to LFA. They're fighting there, and I think you will see them. And there's a Kyrgyz guy, a couple Kyrgyz fighters. Uran Salty Baldiev. I definitely didn't say that in the best possible accent. He was an LFA guy that was supposed to fight in Contender Series, but I think he had to drop out of the fight. Yeah, I think if you're one of those fighters, it would benefit you well to like have a period of your career where you're living in the US, training in the US, and maybe competing in US shows, just to like put you in the best possible position to fight for something like the UFC, for sure. Ooh, here's a really important question. Are you a dog person or a cat person? Animal person at all? Overall, I have not been an animal person. I grew up with a dog. First 15 years of my life, we had a family dog. She was an outside dog. She stayed in her fenced-in area, never really came inside. Never really even was in our yard very much, because my parents were like, don't want her killing the grass. Don't want her getting hair inside the house. They wanted to keep things clean. I think I kind of picked up a little bit of that. And overall, I have not been a huge animal person. And part of that is because I'm a little bit of a clean freak. And I'll tell you the truth. If I go over to a friend's house and they have an animal and there's hair everywhere, I'm like sitting on the very edge of the couch and I'm really like feeling anxious, just because I don't know what it is, but I feel really anxious getting animal hair all over my clothes. It's just the way I am. Maybe there's a tad bit of OCD in there. I do have ADHD. Sometimes ADHD overlaps with OCD. And so I don't know if there's just something about that kind of cleanliness that makes me feel uncomfortable, but that's one of the biggest reasons. Also, the last couple of years, I've lived in very small apartments. And so I felt like I couldn't really give an animal the best possible life. But that's changed. Now I live in a much bigger place, would love to work towards buying a house as well. And if that was the case, I could see myself. Overall, I'm more of a dog person. To tell the truth, I love other people's dogs. I don't always love it when their hair is all over my body, but I love their dogs. My sister and brother-in-law have a dog, and I almost treat it like my nephew. Treat him like my nephew, and I think dogs are wonderful, and I love playing with dogs. When a dog walks by me in the street, sometimes I'll smile and wave at it. I'm dumb like that. And if you look at my Instagram, like once you get past your posts and it's all in like the recommended posts, most of them are like Frenchies, corgis. Instagram has learned that I engage really well with all that kind of dog content. So I do love animals. I love animals in general. I love going to zoos, aquariums. A big nerd when it comes to like biology, especially like ocean life. I mean, you all say I've shown you my tattoo before of the squid. I got that for a lot of reasons, mostly just because I love the ocean. I love sea life, all of that. So I'm a big nerd when it comes to that. And so I love animals. I love dogs. Cats sometimes. I think I've warmed up to cats a little bit more. So I live in Portland, and a lot of people have cats there. So I've been around a lot of cats. I think if cats are nice, if they're not mean cats, and if they're, well behaved, I could see a world where I'm working from home and having an animal keeping me company. So I think I've warmed up to the idea of having one. Probably not going to be a little bit until I actually get one. I have a roommate now, and so I will probably not get an animal as long as we're living in the same place out of respect for him. But yeah, I just want to I would want an animal to have a good life. I wouldn't want to get an animal with a lot of energy that get the zoomies a lot and then have them in this teeny tiny space where it's hard to take them out, so, but I do love animals. Also, slightly related topic, since the Apex will be closed for 6-ish months starting in November, do you think we'll get more Asian UFC cards next year, possibly in new locations? I wouldn't be surprised if we have more shows in Macau while the UFC is figuring things out with China. So it depends. There's a lot of moving pieces. So Jakarta is on the table for next year. I think that that's a really real possibility. I think that Thailand probably not going to happen next year. I would be shocked if Korea happened next year, mainly because they lost the zombie. I think for a place like Korea, what a card that makes sense for them has fighters, local fighters, Korean fighters that fans are really excited about. So until there's a couple Korean fighters that can get a really big following, like a zombie kind of level following, or just like some prospect that's starting to get up into the upper levels of their weight class, I think you probably won't see an event in Korea. China, the more I've talked to people more, I've talked to some people about that this week. And I think that there is some optimism for Chinese events that they could try different provinces in China. So it's all about the relationships, and with Chinese events, what I heard was that for events that are bigger than 5,000 people, they have to have a very special kind of approval from the local like police bureau. And for whatever reason, and I didn't understand it, even the folks I were talking to didn't understand it. We didn't understand why. It could have been a change in leadership, something like that. But like, for whatever reason, the folks in Shanghai didn't approve the UFC event, and the same for Hangzhou. So I think there is some optimism that they could try different provinces and work with different police authorities, government officials to approve the events. So there's a lot of great options. Could they try going back to Beijing? Maybe. Could they try going back to South China again, back to Guangzhou or Shenzhen, perhaps? the UFC Asia team is pretty big, and I'm sure they're already on it. So, yeah, I'm hopeful for China next year. At the very least, maybe we can get some more Macau shows. Again, that's a big arena, so I don't know if they're going to be able to like consistently do that. But the folks I asked some folks this week, like, hey, do you think that they're going to be able to sell? Like, they're going to be able to fill, at least mostly fill the Galaxy Arena in Macau? And they really felt optimistic. They're like, yeah, I think so. Even like they felt like they had a better chance at selling out Macau than Shanghai or Beijing, which I feel like if you were to put Zhang Wei Li in the main event of a Shanghai or a Beijing card, or even like a Shenzhen card, and you have a title fight at the top, and then you fill out the rest of the card with your best Chinese fighters, your Song Yadongs, your Li Jingliangs, your Yan Xiaonan. Make it as stacked as you can. Maybe even put a couple non-Chinese fighters in there that are just really meaningful fights. I think that might be a little bit different. And I think that Chinese MMA is at a much bigger, more lucrative spot than it was in 2017, 2018, 2019, the last time the UFC was there. So I think that they really could. There's a lot of options. Arenas is always a tricky thing of like finding a suitable arena, but yeah, so it'll be interesting. We'll keep an eye on the China thing for sure. What are your picks for Road to UFC? Hey, I gave you actually much earlier in the video. This is by far the longest podcast I've ever done. We're clocking in at over 2 hours here, but we're in Las Vegas. We're at Road to UFC. You all have all of my attention right now, so we're going to keep going until either my voice gives out, which it is getting there, but I'm really enjoying doing this longer podcast. But once this is over, rewind to the beginning of the video. I gave you my full preview on the whole Road to UFC event. Made picks for most of the fights. Some of them I couldn't really make picks for confidently. So, but check that out for sure. Sean Bitter, the legend of regional MMA, of prospects. No one better in the MMA media space to know about prospects than this guy right here. If you could buy stock on one fighter from Road to UFC season, who would it be? Oh man, I love that question, because it's not even necessarily hinging on tomorrow's performance, but it's their performance in the long term. Choi Dong-hoon would be one guy. I feel pretty confidently that Choi will have good success in the UFC. Feng Xiaozan, I would buy stock in her. Sorry, you said if you could buy stock on one fighter. Okay, I'll say Feng Xiaozan, mainly because she is incredibly unknown. Very little fan base, very little, even among Chinese MMA fans, not a whole lot of hype around her. So that would be the stock that's like, you buy it for a really, really low price, but it's going to be worth a lot someday. So far, she has shown, her last couple fights especially, a lot of really good things, and fought really good other Asian MMA fighters. I mean, some of the best fighters in Asian MMA, she's looked really good against them. So I would buy stock in Feng Xiaozan. It could be a little bit risky, and we'll see if there's a repeat against Miki Motono tomorrow. That's who I would buy stock in. Oh, no road is what I meant for the question. Oh yeah, sure. I got you, man. Samander Muradov seems like the biggest prospect on the card. His resume is very impressive, especially the latter half. Yeah, there was some criticism about some of his recent performances, that he wasn't all that exciting, which doesn't matter a lot to me, but it may matter to the matchmakers. So that's the thing with Muradov, is that, again, with Contender Series, you have to see this like you're auditioning for the UFC and they have to enjoy watching your fight. They've got a product to maintain. So that's really what I'm watching for with Muradov. I think, excuse me, what I've seen, just the very brief, somewhat shoddy resume review that I did earlier in this episode, in this podcast, I feel like it's Muradov's fight to lose, but can he get the finish? Can he look good? Can he be somewhat exciting in the process to win the matchmakers over to his side? That's what you got to watch for. Last question, maybe. Do you think Yahoo removing Kevin Iole and getting Ariel to do his own show is Yahoo knowing that they are making the company better? Could be. And you know, I'm not the right person to know the real story behind why Kevin Iole left and started his own website. But Ariel, if you watched his video announcement that he posted about getting hired with Yahoo, he is very, very bullish and excited about the leadership at Yahoo Sports. He believes that these are really, really smart people in power. It's a new breed of leadership at Yahoo Sports, and it sounds. That's what you. It sounds like they're treating Ariel really, really well to make sure that his time there is a very positive experience for him and that he's very happy working for them. So that's great to hear. I mean, Ariel is he is a guy that can make demands for sure. And it sounds like he's getting everything that he wanted and more. So I'm really happy for him. I'm excited too. I'm excited. I love that. I do think that it was a good move. So it was a good move to start this new website. So if you're unfamiliar, what's happening is Ariel Helwani, who many consider the top media member in MMA. He's won Journalist of the Year a gazillion times. He is hired by Yahoo Sports, and rather than just like directly going under the Yahoo Sports banner, they're starting a new website called Uncrowned. I don't know if it's Uncrowned or it probably just is Uncrowned, not Uncrowned MMA. And it's a Yahoo Sports site, but it's under this new name. I think that was really intelligent branding because Yahoo Sports, even if they have a new leadership, even if things are better now, I think it still has a little bit of like an old school reputation attached to it. Even if they are managing to put out great content, when I think who's on the cutting edge of sports reporting and content, I don't and I'll be honest, I don't instinctively think Yahoo Sports. And I think that's probably how a lot of fans feel, especially like having a dedicated website like that. I think that was a really smart move. And I don't know whose idea that was. Maybe it was Ariel's idea, I'm not sure, but I think that's a really smart move. And really looking forward to things with Ariel. And I think that he's getting his own show, Ariel Helwani show, and he's going to be able to own a lot of the stuff. So it seems like they're it's smart. Kevin Iole, again, he's one of those guys that I disagree with a lot of his opinions, and his style of things is different from mine. I'll leave it at that. I won't talk shit about the guy, but I think that if you're gonna go with Ariel, that's a good move. We know that Kevin Iole is bad for the sport, while Ariel being unhinged is better. Nice. I think South Asia would be the most sensible for them to try to expand first, and perhaps a bit in the Middle East. Yeah, I think that they're putting down the roots for Indian MMA. I think that they're going slow, but they're doing the right things by inviting some of those fighters to the PI and investing. Slowly, you're seeing more and more Indian MMA fighters being signed by big management firms. it was Sanjit Budwar, the MFN featherweight champion, maybe the top Indian fighter that's not currently in the UFC or fighting for Road to UFC. Sanjit Budwar got signed by First Round Management, one of the big management firms. Angad Bisht, he's with Iridium. Pooja Tomar is with, who's she with? She's with one of the big ones. It might be Iridium. I'm not sure. But you're starting to see a little bit more of that. And Indian MMA has a long way to go. But by far, someone else told me this week that like whenever the UFC pay-per-view sales, India is always in like the top 3, one of the really big markets. And that is without having really any Indian MMA fighters on the cards. Imagine what they could do with the Indian MMA fighters succeeding in the UFC. Gosh, that would be a huge market. Once you get that, then yeah, you can expect lots of events in India as well. Granted, they can find a good venues for that, but yeah, they're building it. They're definitely building it. Wish they had this in Shanghai. Still, I'm in Europe. That was a perfect wake up and watch MMA at 10 a.m. instead of 2 a.m. Hey, there you go. There you go. Speaking of fighters not signing with the UFC, the visa situation is another thing to keep in mind. Muradov is with Dominance MMA and took almost 2 years to get a visa. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure. He trains in the US, right? I thought that he trained in Florida last I checked. So he is able to be in the US. And yeah, he's obviously fighting, so duh. But you may be right with a lot of the Central Asian fighters. They may have a hard time. That's another thing for sure. Yeah, I always agree. I agree. I always thought UFC wouldn't want too many Dagestani prospects. Yeah. Do I think that Sumit can bounce back with all the bad decisions he's made in the past of his MMA career? I think that he can, but he needs to be really consistent. He needs to consistently perform against decent competition. I think, and he needs to fight for reputable promotions. And I think that if he can do that, his reputation can change. If you're taking easy fights in kind of off the grid promotions, then it's going to be tough. Reputation is really tough. I think that Sumit is a good guy. I know Sumit actually pretty well, and I want the best for him, and I think that he's a good dude. He's a really hard worker, but he does have a little bit of an uphill battle with his reputation. So I think if there are good people advising him along the way, obviously you don't want to throw yourself into the deep end, right? And then get a bunch of losses on your record, but you do want to build yourself slowly. So I think if he can get some fights and, the UAE Warriors, the LFAs, even, if he's training in Sacramento, go with Uriah Faber's promotion, A1 Combat. There you go. I think that would go a long way, and eventually he'll be undeniable. His ability, I think I'll be the first to tell you, Sumit Kumar has a lot of potential. And if he can put the pieces in the right places, I think he could be the next big thing for Indian MMA. But he's got some things to work through for sure. For sure. Which Japanese fighters are you excited for in Contender Series? I think they have a few middleweights like Naito and possibly Iwasaki. I'd love to see Igor Tanabe get a shot as well. Yeah, he is a really fun fighter. I get excited every time he's on a Ryzen show. I was actually pretty shocked. I wasn't all that familiar with the two guys that are on there. And I did confirm like that those two guys are in Iwasaki and Naito. They haven't been announced yet, but yeah, they are in Contender Series. They're not honestly fighters that I know a whole lot about. It's always weird when it's like I have this list of like 40 prospects, and then these two guys kind of come out of nowhere. So the middleweight, I'm not too familiar with. I'll have to do a little bit more research on them. Obviously, the reason why they're there instead of Road to UFC is because of their weight. The welterweights, the middleweights. You also got Kosa Kyun, Korean middleweight. He's going to be in Contender Series on September 3rd. Ding Meng fought at welterweight a few weeks ago, and I did check in. I did speak to Ding Meng yesterday, and he's doing great. He is back to training again. He told me that he was able to get some Las Vegas tacos after the fight, so all is good. And hopefully we get to see him in a big opportunity again in the future where he's able to have a better performance. But yeah, I would love to see Igor Tanabe as well. I'll have to, maybe I should do a video on that. Japanese fighters or Asian fighters that I would love to see in Contender Series. So talking about the welterweight through heavyweight range. There's a topic idea. Sumit actually is training in Bali right now, part of the Block, if not mistaken. Yeah, he is. Just fought last month. The Block, FYI, is the gym that Khan Ofli trains at, the tough finalist this season. That's right. So Sumit's training at a new gym called the Block that's in Bali. And it's like Xiong Jingnan trains there, Khan Ofli, a couple other decent fighters train there. So Sumit is trained. He bounces around a lot, but he's been training there. So that's a good place to train. He last fought at a MMA and I think Muay Thai event that the Block put on called Rumble at the Block on July 27th. And he, I can't even remember who he fought now, but it was fought an Indonesian guy. I think Yunus Day something, Atu, I think was the guy's name, but it was a pretty easy fight. But yeah, wish the best to him. All right. A couple more, and I'm looking at this question. This will be the last one. Not this one, but two more. Can top-tier analysts influence a fan base? I saw beef within the analyst community where the smaller analyst was saying that the bigger, more respected one is dishonest for making jokes about a fight. For example, like a clear joke, Mokaev has been alive longer than he has thrown strikes. And the smaller, less respected analyst got angry saying that it's dishonest and a cop-out, even though it is a clear joke, or saying it's a joke when evaluating a fighter, a cop-out. Yeah, it's interesting. Can an analyst influence a fan base? First, well, of course, yes, they can, but you have to realize that analyst work, I think, will usually be mostly more hardcore niche fans. And the reason for that is because for the most part, not only doing but consuming analyst work is a slow process. It's a very patient kind of content because now there is some like Ghost is really good, and honestly, I take that back a little bit. There's a lot of good analysts that will give you little bits and tidbits on Twitter, but it's still it takes a level of understanding and a level of mental connection to really be able to even understand what they're presenting to. So it's a little bit more of a patient work to really get into analysts' content. So influencing a fan base on a broad level, I don't know if they always do a whole lot, but definitely for hardcore fans, especially fans that are really intensely fans of one fighter that really want to understand their favorite fighter, how they fight in MMA. Yeah, they definitely will gravitate towards that, and they can influence that. But that joke that you mentioned seems fairly harmless to me. It sounded like maybe again for the smaller guy there could have been some allegiances or fan bias in there towards Makayev. Yeah, personally, I don't think that was too disrespectful of a opinion. It's an opinion that's supported pretty strongly by fact. So, yeah. So have I seen Kim Tae-kyun? I believe he's with Yusu Young. Yeah, I did hear that. And also Viper is here as well. Two really good Korean fighters. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm supposed to get introduced to all those guys at some point. So perhaps I'll get to meet them, and that would be really cool. Love to get to meet all of them. But yeah, Kim Tae-kyun is here. I saw pictures that he is here. Well, guys, that is it for me for today's episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me live in Las Vegas. Probably going to get some time by the pool tonight and relax before tomorrow's events. And guys, this has been a hell of a ride, and it's only just begun. And looking forward to the Road UFC coverage tomorrow. Some things are up in the air, and that's fun. And other things, there'll be plenty of coverage on the website and as much as I can give you all throughout my various social media channels. So I'll be working my heart out tomorrow for all of you, the fans, because I am a fan as well. You'll be hard pressed to find someone that is more passionate about Asian MMA and the fighters as I am. So that's why we're here, having a good time, having the time of my life. So I'm signing off. We'll see you guys later.